Hey folks, it's showtime, Sunday, 6 p.m., February 8th. Welcome to Steve's Place. Tonight we're going to have Dr. Odd here to talk about his work with the Tesla coil. And But before that, we have some housekeeping to take care of. First, I'd like to thank Glenn Fern and Danny Dubraw, Mitch Feinstein, and Bernie for coming out here and helping being volunteers and help me move into this new place we got. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we moved. We're talking three 26-foot truckloads of material that had to be moved uh, in a matter of 3 days, and that was a lot of work. I mean, these trucks are packed to the hilt. I mean, if it would have rained, it would have puffed up and blew the truck up, it's so packed. But anyway, we're moved in now. As far as just getting the stuff here, now we got to straighten stuff out. And Bernie's going to be here for the next couple weeks to help me get that done, to get a head start on it. Probably be doing it forever, but there's a lot of stuff here to be gone through. Um, anyway, I'd also like to apologize for our issues with pre-registration here. We've been trying to work with our internet provider here, our host, and I guess like what happened is in November when they upgraded our security certificate, some of the permissions weren't carried through. So now we're figuring out which permissions didn't get carried through and having to go through and do that. And there's certain, a couple of modules to go through. We got the first module taken care of, and now we're working on MoffPay, and hopefully the tech support can figure it out and get that done for us real soon. In the meantime, if you want to order something, give me a call. 520-252-0374 is my cell phone. So feel free to call it. Or you can call the office phone. It rings through to me, and we'll get you taken care of. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to bring in Bernie. Are you there?
Hello. Welcome. Joining
I
in
can hear
from
you.
Steve's Place. Joining in to Steve's Place
Yeah,
from Steve's Place.
Okay, so we have Bernie here, and now we're bringing up Dr. Ott. And do you want to introduce Dr. Ott, Bernie?
Okay, yes. Dr. Ott, an amazing individual. I had the pleasure of meeting firsthand past summer. After I was at TeslaTech, I went to Moon Lake Gathering in Utah, and that is where I met this lovely gentleman. And he was described to me processes that I hadn't disclosed to anyone with my own work in like electrolysis and going into monoatomics. And I was like, this man right here knows what he's talking about, and had the pleasure of interviewing him once before and look forward to what he's got to say tonight.
Well, hey, thanks, Bernie. It's a pleasure meeting you for sure. And I think we talked close to 2 hours. It seemed to go very fast. You have a wealth of knowledge as well, and it's hard to find somebody to actually talk about this subject with any degree of intellectual skill, and you fit the bill. So it was fun talking with you, and a pleasure meeting you actually. And we did have another show before, and I think it was the topic is exciting, always is when you look at understanding life itself.
Absolutely. And the last episode, we started off and you were able to comfortable talking about your spiritual experience and how that got you into it, and about a bit of a divine mission. And it seems that we all seem to have a very similar calling and experience when getting into this stuff, and that whether it's channeling Tesla or just God's work, it's all connected. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say tonight in regards to your work with Tesla stuff.
Well, yes, thank you. Clearly, the once in a lifetime type of intellect, the Nikola Tesla. Incredible breakthroughs, the father of alternating current, as you know, that we wouldn't light up our houses or homes or businesses. We wouldn't really be able to even watch things like the Super Bowl without the alternating current, the blessing that Nikola Tesla brought. But there's a lot more that he was into that the general public don't have any clue about. It was good talking to Steve a little earlier. I showed him a small book, and he knew all about this book, about the Tesla's explorations into human energy itself. Because see, in my research of Tesla, he started out first of all looking into what makes human life energy. Okay, and he was very concerned, I think, about like any other smart individual, what happens when you age, what happens when you pass on or die, what really happens. That's the big mystery of all geniuses looking at, in my opinion. They said, what is life? What is energy? How does it work at the cellular level? And I submit that Tesla learned a lot about that to begin with, then went and branching out into his ability to bring energy into and to harness it. And that's exactly what I found so appealing about Tesla's scientific mind, what he looked for. Now, earlier that Steve showed me some schematics that he brought up, and it's good work, Steve. Great job. One of the first patents, and I'm not exactly sure how many patents Tesla eventually got, but one of his first ones was as you see there on the screen, that is a schematic patent of what he called the violet ray machine. Now that's just one of, I think there were 7 or 8 total pages, but that gives you the example of what was happening utilizing what he called the Tesla coil, the wrapped copper wire that amplified currents coming into it. And the violet ray machine was built to basically increase energy into the human cell through the tissues, through the blood itself. And it was quite the finished unit. There was a picture that Steve showed me of the violet ray machine after its construct, and there you have the picture of it. It had the violet purple color on the lid as well as the base floor. That looks very, very similar to the violet ray machine that I purchased in early 1990 at an antique shop in Montana. So I was traveling through Montana. There's a large antique emporium. I like to just go in there and just look at what they have coming in as inventory. And in the back of the shop, it had a big sign that says quackery, a medical quackery. Well, at the time, I was a licensed naturopathic doctor who understand, and I knew firsthand that if you're going to nature and you're going back to natural healing, the first thing that the establishment does is call you a quack. It's all quackery. No, science and modern pharmakia and that type of mindset is what they believe is science versus what nature provides. So imagine my surprise going back and seeing this violet ray machine. Now, I had read about the violet ray machine and was intrigued with it because I was able to find in an old library the owner's manual, basically how instruction manual, I should say, on how to use the violet ray machine. And my goodness, it was treating people, telling people how, and I shouldn't say just people, medical doctors of that era, and we're talking early 19 teens, 1910s, okay? Back before, this was before there was an American Medical Association, and medical doctors at the time were just skilled individuals that hung out a shingle. They had some medical background and training, but they were just basically country doctors that knew how to perform surgeries, set broken bones, suture things. Back in the 1910s, before World War I broke out, more people died from infections, and cut could turn septic, and if not treated correctly, you could lose an arm or leg or your life because of the infections that was set in on just a common cut. Oftentimes got infected with sepsis. So here we have the young Nikola Tesla seeing this as he was going through his young adulthood, and okay, what is life? What is energy? And I'm sure he was intrigued in his papers and his writings during this era about the phenomena of a thunderstorm, a lightning storm, the majesty of that, how rain that's infused with electricity is clearly a superior growth agent to the trees, the grasses, etc. Anybody that have a brain could see that happen. This is the smell of ozonation, the smell of a lightning storm, a thunderstorm, impregnating the water and causing growth and energy. So, what about using and harnessing that the lightning for human health? It's a fact, and you have to do your digging. If you're suffering from chronic illness, in some cases cancer, in some cases crippling arthritis, there's numerous anecdotal stories in the medical literature about people that got struck by lightning that didn't kill them. It was enough to stop their heart and burn them, but it gave them enough of a jolt that after they recovered from the shock, they had no trace of cancer or no trace of their condition, arthritic paralysis, this type of thing. And that surely, I submit, would intrigue Nikola Tesla to find out what was really going on. And that's why he penned his little book at the time, the learning about what makes human energy work, or the lack thereof, you see. So, yes, though he's not a medical doctor, he was intrigued with the whole concept of energy in the human body and the cell. So that's what led him to create this violet ray machine and patent it. That's what you see on the screen. That it had a number of connector glass tubes on it. There's like 4 or 5 different shapes of it. And what it would do go through the tube technology structure and create a powerful energy field through his coil to cause argon and xenon noble gases to impinge into the body and make the body basically an electrode that would light you up, literally. Just a small little simple little pulse or a light that would come, and you would become lit up in an electrical current. That's basically what happened with this violet ray technology. Now, whenever he started to experiment with this, he found that common diseases like the cold or infections in wounds really seemed to respond favorably to this electric currents that he would produce through this machine. In fact, the skin and bones of the treated individual would smell very strong of ozone. And if you know what ozone is, it's simply concentrated oxygen. We have atmospheric oxygen that we breathe, which is O2. Ozone is any combination above O2, whether it's O3 to O7, O9. And so saturating the oxygen molecules into the blood and smelling the ozone in the tissues, what that was doing was creating a high oxygen environment in vivos in the body. And as you can imagine, if you have that type of ozonation, we know this now very clearly. Ozonation kills bacteria and other nasties in infected water. It's one of the primary ways to clean up contaminated water through ozonation systems. Okay, it's common practice in cleaning contaminated water rather than putting chlorine in it. If you don't have ozonation factors, go dump some chlorine in it, and chlorine, which kills the bacteria in much the same way as ozone does, by the way. So that's really what was happening with Nikola Tesla's violet ray machine. Now, it was such an amazingly successful product because when you have electricity and oxygenation flowing, your healing times are sped up. Instead of a broken bone taking 6 weeks to 2 months to heal, he was finding that broken bones knitted much faster in as little as 10 days to 2 weeks, believe it or not, depending on how often you use the electrolysis flow. So you can imagine, even this manual that I got, I believe that manual was published in 1917, about the end of the Great War, World War One, or concurrent with that, and it had protocols to treat pregnant women in childbirth, to increase their oxygenation, and the children were born much more healthy. The statistics were less problems in childbirth. All these things were right there in the manual, and how to work on a broken bone after setting it to increase the healing time. All of this, and it was quite in depth. It was about a 200-page manual. I was intrigued with that. I wanted to get a copy, find out how I can find a violet ray machine. And here I am. I found one in this antique store. And after a little bit of negotiation, if it's all, I was able to get it for under $5,000. I'll put it that way. And which, if you look at what Tesla did to manufacture these, the retail was almost $1,000 in the 1910s. That's a big ticket item back then. So you see, it was something that was very intriguing. I, of course, didn't want to buy it unless it didn't work, right? So they plugged it in, turned it on. It crackled and popped and smelled. Whiff of ozone, right? And yes, the sealed tubes lit up, and we were able to. It did work. It was amazing. So I took it into my naturopathic practice to try and get some feedback from clients, which were very positive. And I was excited. I said, why in the world can't we make this again? The patent is now public domain. So I took the schematics, and again, this is old tube field technology. And I enlisted a brilliant electrical engineer gentleman, and he was able to build a solid state circuitry, and we were in business. We basically having a functioning violet ray machine and we called it the photon sound beam, or PSB is what we called it. And so that's my background in this amazing Tesla technology, which again, if you look on the internet today, it's listed as quackery, as nonsense. But I submit, no, it's not, because it oxygenates the blood, and there's no doubt about that fact. And oxygen and electrons that flow from that oxygen structure it can be nothing but good. I don't see any negative drawbacks. So that's basically the foundational story there, Bernie, of the photon sound beam / Nikola Tesla's violet ray machine.
That's amazing. Can you get a little bit more into the specifics of yours? And because it's like you're saying you're also putting sound into the photon beam in the technology.
Yeah, in fact, when you look at the definition of light itself from physics, and Tesla was so brilliant, he knew what light was. In other writings, I'm sure Steve can vouch for that, along with Johann Kepler and others, that light in physics is simply a wave, it's electromagnetic pulse, Hertz pulse, that travels. Okay, so we have the different colors of light, but they travel at the speed of light. It's a transverse, what's meaning moving, electrical wave of sound. So in its very essence, the violet ray machine was pulsing light beams. These violet beams are like, well, we know what UV light, ultraviolet light, right? And we know broad spectrum light. My uncle John Ott perfected a light bulb called the Ott light. And so the broad spectrum lighting is got different moving electromagnetic waves, but they're all based on a base Hertz frequency. There are 7 colors in the spectrum. We got, every rainbow, you see the 7 colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. 7 colors of the rainbow. Every time the colors change, the light wave and the frequency sound moves the same way. Isn't it interesting that there's 7 basic notes in a chromatic scale? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, right? There's matching structures of 7. I believe Tesla understood this very much so. There's a pattern of creation that you can't ignore, and it's not randomly done. I believe there's an absolute pattern to that, all of that creation. It all goes into sound and frequencies. Tesla said many times, if you understand the power of 3, 6, and 9, you can basically unlock and understand the universe itself. And that's a lot of what's going on here with the violet ray machine, the pulsing of this light itself. 3, 6, and 9 figure into it as well. We don't have time to go into all of that, and it's pretty technical, but Tesla was just a flat out genius, way ahead of his time.
Absolutely. And it's I myself, like, I find I have to kind of, my dad, he calls me like the reincarnation of Tesla sometimes. I don't think so. I think, if anything, I'm reincarnation of Bernard the Alchemist. But it's that there's I'll stay up for 3 days like straight working on something. Like I'll set up an electrolysis reactor and I'll plug it in and I'll just like end up drinking coffee nonstop and it'll run for 3 days. But it's by the time I get to the third morning, I'll go out and I'll sun gaze. And I will meditate and I will usually like fall asleep standing for like 10 minutes or something, just like Nikola Tesla. It's kind of funny. But or supposedly did, but it's like on the third morning I'll go out and sun gaze and I'll get like a download from of like what I'm supposed to do for my next experiment, or like get some sort of like a piece of that source code. And yeah, it's, and you have to do it sober. You can't cheat and use substances to do it. You have to like be your purest self to get these downloads and actually get the code of the universe. But just, yeah, that 3, that 6, the 9, and that it's like light, magnetism, and gravity essentially into it in a bit. But I'll let you go more into explaining what you figured out with it.
Well, again, it's standing on the shoulders of genius. Actually, my mentor, Dr. Linus Pauling, was a genius in his own right, 2-time Nobel Prize winner. And though he was not an expert on Tesla technology, he surely knew enough about it to be dangerous. And that's kind of where I am. Okay. When you talk about how the brain operates, and you look at the brain being mostly a water structure and the gray matter of the brain, science now has shown that the human brain typically only utilizes roughly 3 to 5% of its mass. It's quite amazing that when different parts of the brain starts firing, when you say have a stroke of genius or a brilliant idea that comes a lot of times from meditating in the sunlight, like, don't forget the sun is electromagnetic energy of light. Solar panels light up because of the sun's energy. So when it radiates on the skin and the brain and through the eyes, indeed, sometimes bright ideas are born. And the emoji of a light bulb coming on is not too far off base, actually. Okay, you have the light energy that illuminates part of the brain matter, and ideas then are brought to fruition. That's how inventions are made, basically. Concurrent with Tesla, we have Thomas Edison, and Edison, the Wizard of Menlo Park, and the creation of a light bulb, all of that. That's what we're talking about here. Sometimes you have to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. I don't know how many failures were made before the incandescent light bulb by Edison was perfected. And he said many times it's not a matter of being discouraged. He says, I just found out 1,000 ways that wouldn't work. You got to find the one thing. And I believe there was some professional jealousy between these two great minds at the time, at Edison and Tesla. They were both so genius in their thought process, and yet there's always that rivalry too, as is typical. So anyway, Dr. Pauling, my mentor, was on the same type of a path structure, looking at what makes health versus disease state. My mentor, Dr. Pauling, every time we had our discussions, our hour and a half sessions, he would always turn back and says, remember that every disease state, every disease condition in the human organism is caused from a mineral deficiency structure. Minerals. Well, as an alchemist, what does that mean? Well, minerals on the periodic table are the basics foundation really of all compounds ultimately. And if you look at what makes a mineral, it's because of its atomic weight and its specific frequency pulse on the quantum level. That's really what we're talking about here with not only Tesla and Tesla coils, but Edison and all of this. Okay, what makes a light bulb illuminate? Okay, what makes the chemical reaction happen, no matter what it is in any invention? There is that common thread. Okay, and energy has to be generated and manipulated in some way for the invention to benefit humankind. Isn't that kind of the basis of everything here? So when you talk about alchemy, the philosopher's stone, all of that is really kind of what we're looking at here, right? The ultimate way to transmutate elements, because that's when you can start to really harness nature in a powerful way. So is that kind of where you wanted to go off on there, Bernie? Or
Oh, absolutely, right. And you're getting into the resonant frequencies, and that's the key to actually understanding what makes up the atomic structure, that what makes up bonding between the atoms and the energy, and what really is solidifies matter, and that it's all just vibration of these base resonant frequencies.
Yep, that's really all there is to it. And it's a simple equation, but it's very, very, very complex boson. So and that's what I think what drove people like Nikola Tesla into the realms of study that he did and perfected in his later years, especially. Um, I don't know if you've studied much about what he, in the letters to people back in the old world, his family, his relatives, he mentioned he had actually perfected, and this is where it gets really kind of woo-woo to a lot of people, that he had invented and was working to perfect time travel on the time-space continuum. Now that gets a little bit eye raising. Why would he even want to do that? Well, again, it goes back into motion and time. And when you look at light as being a transverse or a moving electromagnetic wave, just I wanted just to ask you, Bernie, how would you define time? We know how to
Well,
tell time. We look at a watch or a nuclear clock, and we can tell what time it is. But really, most people can't really define time.
so I myself see time in a couple of different dimensional states, right? That there's the fractal present moment of time, and it's relative to space, right? It's tied to your time space perspective. And then there's all time that is tied in with actual matter itself. And then you have time decay and whatnot, where, right, it gets quite complex, but that when you're moving or breaking down space, you also have to go with time within it. And and that consciousness also is connected into that too. But yeah, there's never enough time, but always the time and the moment of time we are in.
Yes, and so the atomic clock is very accurate, but time is, if you talk to a physicist, they'll tell you really the definition of time is simply a measurement of molecular motion. Things are in motion. So if motion stops, or there is no time as we know it, become timeless. So think about that in the equation. So when if you're able to harness that motion of light in some way, in the brilliance of a Nikola Tesla, can you actually create a machine where you pass into the time/space continuum? And apparently Tesla did just that. But my goodness, what an amazing experiment that would be, to go back in and just to imagine going back in time. What would happen if you were to alter that time and make something, a major event happen, where the future would be changed and altered? These are the type of questions that like the movie Back to the Future, okay, is a classic example, and The Time Machine by Jules Verne, all these other uh, stories or thought process. Think about it. And apparently, if you did interact in a different way, you would form an alternate time and space universe, a parallel universe. Now that gets really kind of scratch your head and type of a thought process. We see in that era, the 40s, right, just before Tesla's passing, there were experimentations in the Philadelphia shipyard, the Philadelphia experiment, by hitting a ship, USS Eldridge, there in the Philadelphia yard, off in the ocean, with a beam that would render it invisible to radar. That was experimentation that would happen. But the fact is, the USS Eldridge not only went invisible to radar screens, but it went extra dimensional. It just disappeared and vanished, but came back with some very strange anomalies, missing members of the crew that had jumped ship because of the weirdness, that were lost, and they found many of them came up in different time space arrangements. Human beings welded into the ship, became one with the ship itself. Very strange things that are still to this day classified, but yet it did happen. All right. In my radio show interview, The Story Behind the Story, in the 90s, I interviewed an individual that the story is, my goodness, he had multiple iterations of himself, identical fingerprints, identical DNA samples, yet it was two individuals, an older gentleman that had stayed with the Eldridge itself on board, but another one that actually was rescued because he jumped ship. It's an amazing story that most people would say is nuts and crazy to even consider. The Al Bielek story is the name of the gentleman, but yet he has the artifacts to prove it. I mean, he has pretty much good documentation, but you can't, whatever agency that's doing this in the government regions, they just, this is stuff that you really can't get a clear handle on, and so they kind of want you to just not know about it, not even dig into it, because it's basically, the whole idea of human energy. I mean, it really is the field of study of a Nikola Tesla, of what he was trying to get into. Okay, so yeah, I've tread on that walk quite a bit, trying to figure it out, understand it. Was Mr. Bielek absolutely, was he a fraud? I absolutely not. Believe he was very much legitimate, and he was as stunned as anybody, trying to figure out, just a regular guy, how to make sense of what happened to him. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and it's still treading the unknown. Okay. I don't know if it's a good idea to even go down that ramp. The CERN super collider is a classic example. Sometimes you're looking and trying to get what they call the God particle. Maybe, just maybe, that's something that we shouldn't, a door that we shouldn't open, because who knows what can happen with that. You're playing with fire, just like the USS Eldridge in the Philadelphia experiment. Go ahead. You may want to make comments or questions on any of that.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. I knew Al Billick for many, many years.
Wow.
You know, I mean, we're talking about 20 years. He spoke at a lot of my conferences. In fact,
Wow.
you know, if you go on our website, our YouTube channel, we have a ton of material on Al Billick. And if you go to my website, TeslaTech.info, and use my my search engine I have in the yellow box there for speakers, and you look up Al Billick in there, and you'll find a list of all the ones that we have up there at this time. And in fact, on the videotapes, you know, we're going through, Bernie, there's a couple Al Billick ones up there too.
I know. I don't know if you guys saw me smile as soon as Ott brought up Al Billick, but I was like, oh, I know Steve's gonna jump in here because I've been seeing those presentations in the archives.
And I know there's a group, like a group of scientists out of Goddard, that were trying to track Al Billick's story and everything, and try to validate a lot of the stuff that he said and everything. And these are right out of the Goddard Space Center, so these aren't, you know, they're not crazy people. But anyway, they say when you get to Montauk, things get really weird real fast. You know, for starters, you know, they kind of mark it as a state, you know, land, but it's really not, because if you get a speeding ticket there, you go in front of a federal judge. Okay.
Yes.
So, and there's a tunnel, according to our ham radio net that we had in New York back in the 80s. And they said there's a tunnel that goes from Montauk to Tesla's Wardenclyffe. Okay. And underneath Wardenclyffe, there's a bunch of tunnels that no one really knew about, you know, until the company that bought the place, the film company, they were starting to dig trenches to expand their thing, and they fell into one of those tunnels. And they followed the tunnel back to where the property line was, and there's an armed guard down there. There was at that time. So according to these ham guys don't really fool around, because they have to give out, you know, identify themselves when they're talking. You know, so it's not just like some guy at the bar talking. So yeah, there's a lot of mysterious things about Al Billick, you know, in time. And one of those physicists asked me if I thought time travel was possible, and I said, "Well, you tell me, John. You're the physicist, you know." And it could be possible, but the question is, are we remaining in this dimension when we do that? And that's the real question.
That is a big question. Yep. Can you? I think also the bigger question, Steve, is can you coexist in different elements in quantum physics? Can you have an existence in this time and space continuum and still exist in a different dimension of time and space? And that's I've talked to some physicists about that, and the general consensus is yes, matter can coexist in different dimensions of time and space, which that to me explains the Al Billick mystery right there.
Well, I also think it gets back to the whole thing about why we're even here in the first place. Who are we all about and everything, and in the Bible, and where do we go when we die? You know,
Yep.
Do we really die? You know, or we just I believe that we go into another dimension, And I think God kind of gives us a hint of that if you read in Genesis, I believe it is, where Enoch, who was so beloved, who so loved God that God is saved him from death and instead translated him.
Yes,
Okay, and I think that he's kind of hinting there that we go into another dimension. You know,
I agree. I agree with that, Steve. Yeah. In fact, if you go even deeper down the proverbial rabbit hole, you look at Genesis chapter 6, and you see that you have the angels, which are created. They're different than human beings. They have different structure, different build than humans do. Word we read that humans are created a little bit lower than the angelic realm. So here we have Genesis 6. These angels came down against God's wishes and lusted after human women and had sexual relations with them and created a race of giants called the Nephilim. Now people look and say, well, that's ridiculous fiction. But is it really? There's all kinds of archaeological evidence that the giants of the Nephilim did exist, and especially in the time of in Canaan, in the Promised Land. We see Joshua going to war against those Nephilim, and then they went into the earth. Their headquarters are in the earth. I got to tell you a little story, if I could. I was a young lad, 16-year-old junior in high school, and in the summer months, I grew up in Hawthorne, Nevada, the ammunition depot. There where my father's worked, but we had a family ranch. My uncles and cousins ran the 500 cow calf operation, and so they needed some help. So I would go back there and play cowboy with my cousins, and that was fun for me to put on my cowboy hats, my boots, and my spurs, and go riding. Well, on one occasion, we were down in southern Utah at our ranch land, and the BLM land animal unit monthlies, and there was a big thunderstorm that came through and washed a lot of new gullies into the floodplain there in a place called Johnson Canyon. And I came around, I was looking for cattle that might have gotten caught in the flood, looking for casualties and trying to round them up. I came around a newly washed gully that was probably 5 or 6 feet deep, and in the sandy bed there. And I came around, and lo and behold, I thought it was maybe a dinosaur bone poking out. It was. I looked more closely. It was a massive skull, human-like skull, but it was huge. And I got out and dug around it and found the shoulder blades that was there, and that the skull was actually apart from the body. And I went and got my cousins, and before we knew it, we called the BLM ranger, and the BLM came in, and the next thing we knew, it was all some archaeologists came in and fenced it all off, and we weren't allowed to go anywhere near that. I watched them work from the top of a ridge line with my binoculars, and it was a major excavation, but they brought in a semi truck, loaded it in, and it was gone. No, nothing was ever on the news about it. I thought it was a huge discovery. They basically told us not to talk about it because nobody would believe us, this type of thing. But that was, it was 1975. I'll never forget. I was 16 years old then. I came back very discouraged about this exciting discovery of this huge skeleton. And I was on the basketball team at my high school, and one of my teammates was Paiute Indian gentleman who lived in the reservation, and I was telling him about because I'm tall, I'm 6'7", played center forward on the basketball team, And I tell him, I says, if we had the skeleton that I saw, I think it was at least 10 foot tall giant. And he's looked at me and he said, "You found this where?" And I showed him on a map. Well, he went in, and I was able to meet with one of the elders of the Paiute reservation there, and they were telling me about the legend, the story they had passed down from generation to generation about giants that fought their ancestors, and they were cannibals and such, and very evil, and they went into their cave and place called Lovelock Cave.
Yeah, heard of that.
And lo and behold, I wanted to go see that. I wanted to go dig in. There's part of that cave that was partially caved in with antiquity. Well, here I am, adventurous, doing a spelunking with, with headlights and long ropes to measure where we're at. We went down deep into that and found some really amazing writing chipped into the rock high up on the ledge. It wasn't Native American pictographs. It was more of an ancient language. And we went past a certain point, and it got weird in there. We got out and came in, and our friends, we went past the point where we shouldn't have gone. In other words, deep into this Lovelock Cave. The next thing that we were talking to some of the tribe members. It was in government land, of course, BLM land, Lovelock Cave. They came in and dynamited that once they couldn't go past a certain point. They kept it blocked off. Now, why is that? There is definitely a history there of these giants in the land, these Nephilim energies. They're real. I'm here to say I've seen them. Don't know what they are. Don't know if we need to know that. But it goes back into, again, who are we? What are we doing here? Is the Bible real? Is it trusted? Or do we have a creator that has time, literally time, in his hand? I've come to the conclusion we cannot be just accidental creations, just happen by an evolutionary chance and luck. There's too much order in the universe. There's too much of these absolute frequency structures of elements combining together to be accidental. I'm sorry, I can't say that's the same thing. I've debated my science colleagues who are completely part of the science of evolution thought process. But to say that we evolved from chimpanzee or the great apes is like saying my laptop Apple Macintosh evolved from my cell phone. They're both they're different. It doesn't make any sense that you can say that it just naturally happened without design, intelligent design. And that's the glory of Tesla. The violet ray machine, these things he pioneered, they're definitely by an intelligent design with a purpose. So that's just my worldview, guys. It's maybe a little bit off on a tangent there, but
that's okay. I share exact similar experiences, parallel in my own life. The more I get into alchemy, I see divine intelligent creation with it. And as far as going into the former Nephilim, and that are they still around? And so the Okanagan, British Columbia, I was just out there before I came down here, and I got to know some of the native indigenous there, and I started asking them about like had he had any interactions with Sasquatch, and he goes, "Oh, not just that. There's also giants out here still, and they live up in those caves." And then he also got into their creation stories, and that under Lake Kalamalka, which is right next to this giant Lake Okanagan, that there's a documented sunken city down there, and that was just recently discovered, and that in their native creation myths, there was fish people that lived down there that brought their tribe out through the last cataclysm. And so, it's all over the land. It's all over the people that were from here from the beginning, and that it all ties into the holy books in the Bible, and God's creation of what we are and what we're created in the image of.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet some Hopi elders on Second Mesa years ago in the 90s again, and was allowed to go into the kiva where they have the ceremonial dances, and going down under the trap doors into the kiva is where the tradition a couple millennia ago, 2000, where they came out as they were basically brought to the surface by what they called the ant people. And they have these pictographs carved into the rock under the kiva showing these ant people that live just like ants do in colonies and so forth and so on. But these ant people were advanced, they said, much smarter than the Hopi people were more of their working class slaves, but they brought them up in freedom. And there's also pictographs of the giants that were also living there too, as well as other. I mean, it's just these are absolutely ancient carvings, and just not taught in school, is it? but it's very real. So yeah, that's the story of the Hopi and the Navajo and their sacred mountain, Navajo Mountain, and the areas that go inside that into the inner earth structure. So what we don't know, guys, is can fill up great encyclopedic volumes. All right, to think we know it all is prideful. I mean, getting back to Tesla, if you read him, he seemed to be extremely humble in his thirst and expansion of knowledge. Always to learn more, to always grow in understanding of how to harness the energy cycles for the benefit of humanity. And that's kind of why I revere personally Nikola Tesla. Incredible intellect. And we need more of those still today.
Well said, sir.
I'm going to kind of cut this short here, guys. I want to thank you for coming, Dr. Ott. And by the way, I did a lot of work with John Ott's lights back in the 80s and 90s. Okay, so in fact, we used them in our museum, and so we have a lot of common ground here. Our interests and actually our paths almost crossed a couple of times.
So that just means they have to cross this summer at TeslaTech 2026, and we got to get Dr. Ott to send in his bio and get you as a presenter this year, so we can all meet in person again there.
Yeah, and I'd like to encourage everyone to get pre-registered for the conference. Right now, for this is the last week, I'm going to get 50% off. The price is going to go up as of probably Saturday morning. So get your registration in, and you can save a lot of money. It's going to be at the same hotel we've been at. My mind's going blank.
I'm trying to think of the name too.
Crown Plaza. Be at the Crown Plaza again. And the room rates are running at $129.90. Start at $129.95 for 1 to 2 people, and that will include breakfast, which is a real bargain, because breakfast, generally costs anywhere from $10 to $20 these days. So we got a really good deal on the hotel, and if you plan way ahead, it becomes affordable. And like I said, right now I'm giving 50% off. So that can help ease the pain, you know. And last but not least, we'll be back next week, and hopefully I can get Bernie to show me how to do a live stream, and we can walk through our new place here and show you what we're doing here. And thank you again, Dr. Ott, for being here. Thank you, Bernie, and see you all next week.
Thanks, Steve. Be well.
And thank you, Dr. Ott. Pleasure.
Yeah,
We'll be
my
in touch,
pleasure.
my friend.
Take care.
Yeah.